Hey guys, Jared here, the HOA Crusader, and we're going to talk today, make another video about some things that'll help you in your HOA and make your HOA experience better. And the thing we're going to be talking about today is bad board members. They come in all different varieties and shapes and sizes, and we're going to talk about the common features and characteristics to watch out for of these bad board members, and ultimately what are the best ways to navigate or handle them. So the first person we're going to talk about is the absentee board member. This type of board member comes about for a variety of different reasons, but usually when we see an absentee board member, it's because they're just filling a role on the board. There's a vacancy, they needed someone to fill it, either to make the numbers work or because there's someone worse that they don't want to be on the board, right? So many times we'll see them as a placeholder for someone else that they're trying to keep off of the board. Generally, the person who ends up as this absentee board member will be friends with the president or whoever's really in charge, and they will kind of be placed there to just cast a vote in the same direction as really whoever they're friends with that put them there. They're not really productive. They don't contribute anything. Many times they're late to the meetings or they don't show up at all. They're not part of the email chains. They're not really giving their feedback and participating in the discussion. This can be fine in certain situations, like if you had a really bad regime and you're trying to overthrow that regime and put in a new regime and you really just need someone to keep bad people off the board. That's fine for a short duration of time, but ultimately, if you want the best long-term outcome, you're gonna wanna go back to a board member who is actually invested in the job and is willing to contribute. And that will lead to the best outcomes. Okay, if the person is in fact just busy, then we can try to be flexible and try to make arrangements as to when the board meets or how they communicate, or get this person involved if it's something they really want to do. If it's not something they really want to do and they're really only there for holding this place, ultimately you're going to want to find a better board member. Next up, the abuser. This person has a habit of speaking in abusive or condescending or negative ways. They're insulting. There's a good word, it's called reviling. They might really try to hurt other people with their words, demean them, talk down to them. Obviously, it's toxic. It's not great for a board. They're generally going to get into disagreements more often than a normal, emotionally balanced, healthy board member. In those situations, you might even need to bring in an HOA mediator to mediate the situation if you can't get them off the board, but really there's no place for that. If the board is a toxic environment, then there's going to be a tremendous amount of inefficiency, and then that's going to lead to a poorly run condo complex, and it's going to lead to bad experiences for everybody. So ultimately, you just want to get them off the board. There's no place for that. You can't have the financial future of everybody in your association dependent on this person who's abusive, right? And ultimately, there's a liability issue at stake here. The HOA can be sued. So if someone is hurt or offended by this person, that person can go and sue the HOA and the board of directors, and ultimately the HOA's insurance or HOA will have to come out of pocket to pay the legal fees to defend that person. Rather than get the HOA in a position where they're getting sued by someone because of this abusive board member, just step up, find someone else to do the job, get them out. The next one is the conversation hog. We all know the conversation hog. They talk more than they listen. They cut other people off when they're talking. They're not particularly easy to talk to. They kind of dominate the board conversation, and they don't really value or listen to other people's opinions. I'm sure we all know someone like this. We've run into them either at work or on the board or in another social circle we're part of. I've come across it where many times they're generally nice people, they just don't have good social skills, right? And so they don't understand that part of developing a relationship and rapport and being effective in a social setting is listening more than we speak. If you have been accused of being this type of person, or you know you are this type of person, just really be conscientious of working on listening more than you speak. Most of the books I've read on entrepreneurship and business and developing relationships, everyone says the most well-liked individuals speak the least. They listen, they ask questions, they let other people talk. If there's someone who's just genuinely incapable of that, they may need to be replaced. And once that person's been removed or voted out, it's amazing what happens to the group dynamic and how much more efficiently things can run when that person's gone. The bully, this kind of goes back to the abuser. They have very strong opinions. They kind of use intimidation tactics to get what they want. They might do a little bit of grandstanding or, bravado to achieve their end goals. It can be toxic, you might need to bring in an HOA mediator, but ultimately you really need to find someone who is both capable and assertive and dominant. And that's why in a lot of the courses we do and a lot of the things we teach, we talk about the psychology and social component of the HOAs and the politics. I mean, there's a ton of psychology and sociology that goes into effective management of this stuff. So a bully is really only a bully until someone more dominant, more assertive comes along. And if that person is also peaceable, many times that bully will kind of end up taking a back seat. The buck passer. Okay, this is a big one. They refuse to take responsibility for their part in stuff, and they shift blame to other people when anything comes up. So one of our core values is accountability, because we see this passing of the buck so many times. We see so many board members who will blame it on the property manager, they'll blame it on another board member, they'll blame it on a unit owner, or whatever the case is. And accountability is such a huge piece to being a good leader, and it's such a huge piece to running an effective organization. If you have someone who's always trying to pass the buck, always trying to blame someone else, they're not really fit for a leadership role. And if they're not going to take accountability for their decisions and their actions, then why put them in a position where, like, that's the whole name of the game. Like, you're on the board, you are accountable for the decisions you make, and you're accountable to all your neighbors. The next one is the curmudgeon. Now, the curmudgeon is someone who is stuck in their ways. They've probably been around in this HOA, they've been a unit owner since the beginning of time, or they've held leadership roles in another HOA for a long time, and they've recently moved into yours, and they are creatures of habit. They like the way things have been done in the past. They don't like change. They might resist many changes that are being made because XYZ is the way it's always been done. This can be positive for an HOA. It can be a stabilizing force to keep the HOA kind of running in the same direction and give people a semblance of consistency. However, with any system, it's not perfect. So when we stick to one way of doing things, we rob ourselves of the opportunity to change and do things better. I notice it a lot coming in as a younger property manager, a younger management company altogether. And there's a lot of new information. The landscape of HOAs is changing, especially with regards to insurance and some other things. So we can't continue to do things the way we've always done them. Understand that if you're at a place where your HOA needs change and it's been doing things the same way and it's kind of gotten stale, maybe not having these people be featured in the most vocal or the only positions of leadership. We want some kind of fresh blood, some newer people, some newer unit owners, younger unit owners who are willing to kind of do things a little differently in the spirit of progress. The grouch. They're bleak, they're pessimistic with regards to everything. It's always negative. It's always negative about other people. They're talking negatively about other board members and homeowners. Ultimately, don't let them dominate the conversation. People who are grouches are not grouchy generally because of the people they're talking negatively about. They're genuinely, deeply unhappy people for whatever reason. Life circumstances, they've been through some stuff. We cannot allow them to bring their negativity and project it over everyone else. So if we have someone on the board who tends towards grouchiness, there's a few things we can do. Steer the conversation away from negativity whenever the negativity comes up. And this isn't to say that we can't acknowledge negative traits or negative aspects of others. We acknowledge that fact and then we move on with the conversation onto the solution. If they're unwilling to change or unwilling to take a step back and start focusing on the solution, then maybe they don't really have a place on the board, because we want a healthy and upbuilding and cohesive working environment. The last one, the interloper. The interloper is someone who gets involved, who meddles in other people's business, or more specifically, does other people's jobs. Ultimately, it comes down to they don't stay in their lane. They have a specific job or task or duty that they're supposed to be doing, and many times they don't do that duty, or they don't do that duty well. And instead of doing what they're supposed to be doing and doing their job, they go and do other people's jobs. And the interloper can many times take on more than they can chew. They can step on this person's toes or that person's toes, and it leads to this kind of confusion and a very difficult dynamic. Most recently, I can think of a board who they got impatient with me, right? I wasn't working fast enough for them, so they, started to do my job. And I'm very polite about it, like, thank you, try to be appreciative. I think in their mind, they thought they were helping me out. But what happened was there were certain situations that came about that could have very negatively affected the community because they were doing my job, but they don't know what I know. have another association where the president was approving invoices, which led to a lot of confusion when there was money missing. It's like, well, who approved these invoices? The treasurer? Treasurer said no, it was the president. President says, well, the treasurer, it was the treasurer's job. Like, just everybody do their job, everybody stay in their lane. That, I think, is a behavior that can be modified or taught or changed. And if it can't be, and people are refusing to kind of stay in their lane, they're just incapable of that, then it might be time to find a new person. So yeah, guys, that's basically the standard variety of bad board members. I hope that you guys got something from this conversation. I hope that you guys learned something and know what to look out for and kind of how to deal with those people. Most of the time, at least one of those will be on the board, if not multiple. And you really want to either retrain them so that they can be more effective in their role, or replace them with someone who's willing to do the job, who can be more effective. So training is a big component. We do a lot of training here. So if you don't like the way things are run, be part of the change. So that's all I got. I'm gonna get off my soapbox now. Like and subscribe if this was valuable to you. We'll catch you guys next time. Thanks, guys.